Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Direct Path, a User Guide by Greg Goode. Narrated by James Anderson Foster. Publisher's Note: in this audio edition, you will hear references to visual elements present in the print and e-book formats of the book. Introduction. This is a set of experiential tips and experiments for the direct path. What I mean by the direct path is the set of self-inquiry teachings attributed by Nityatripta to Sri Atmananda Krishna Menon and later elaborated upon by Jean Klein, John Levy, Alexander Smith, Philip Reynard, Francis Lucille, and Rupert Spira. This book can also be considered a user guide or missing manual to my own standing as awareness. This book consists of a set of experiments with explanatory text. The book's purpose is to deeply investigate many different aspects of experience, including sensation, perception, bodily feeling and motion, waking and sleeping, emotion, attention, thought, rationality, and the sense of being a single, global, unlimited witness of all that arises. What we discover in every case is that there are actually no independent objects experienced at any time. There is never any separation or otherness, but simply love, openness, clarity, sweetness, awareness. In short, your true nature itself. This approach is often called a tattvopadesha, a sequential, logically connected presentation of the teaching from beginning to end. How to use this book. There are several ways to use this book, and you can mix and match as you please. You can listen through from the beginning to the end, the same way you would listen to any other book on non-duality. You can include the experiments or skip them. You can do a slow digest. This is akin to the classic contemplative processing or lectio divina of the mystics. It is when you savor the flavor of the words and passages, immersing yourself in the sweetness as awareness speaks to you. Here, too, you can include the experiments or skip them. You can focus on the experiments, starting at the beginning and working your way through. The experiments have been organized from the concrete to the abstract. They all represent identifiable barriers that come up for people as they do self-inquiry. Disclaimer: this book is for educational purposes only, and is not intended in any way to be a replacement or a substitute for qualified medical advice, diagnosis or treatment, or as a replacement or substitute for psychological advice, diagnosis or treatment, or therapy from a fully qualified and licensed person. If you think you are suffering from a medical or psychological condition, consult your doctor or other appropriately qualified professional person or service immediately. The author and publisher of this book are not responsible or liable for any action made by a user based on the content of this book. We are not liable for the contents of any external books or websites mentioned or listed, or for any actions made by a user based on the contents of these books or websites, nor do we necessarily endorse any product or service mentioned or advised on any of these books or websites. Any data or information is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended for any other commercial or non-commercial purposes. We will not be liable for any errors of omission or commission in the content of this book, or for any actions taken in reliance thereon. By listening to and using this book, you agree not to redistribute the material found therein unless appropriate rights have been granted. We shall not be liable for any damage or costs of any type arising out of or in any way connected with your use of this book. By reading and using this book, you fully agree to these terms. Who is this book for? This book is for anyone who encounters a sticking point in their inquiry. That topic may well be covered here. In fact, most of the topics were included because they have been questions raised in people's inquiry. This book is also for anyone who wishes to further explore the sweetness of having fallen in love with awareness, feels drawn to know the truth of their being and the nature of the world, wishes to explore the world of their experience to discover what lies at its core. Love. 1. You do not know anything but yourself. 2. You do not love anything but yourself. So both knowledge and love have yourself as their object, therefore you are pure knowledge and love. Notes on Spiritual Discourses of Sri Atmananda. In everyday terms, the goal of inquiry in the direct path is to integrate the head and the heart in unity. In this unity, knowledge and love are flip sides on a 45 RPM record of infinite thinness. Knowledge is love distilled by clarity. Love is knowledge pervaded by sweetness. In this clarity, there is no cold intellectualizing or blind sentimentality. Love itself is transformational. If one doesn't fall in love with anything along the way, not even a little bit, then it will be hard for experience to feel sweet. What kinds of things can one fall in love with? Candidates include awareness, the teaching, the teacher, a book, being, the universe, God, Krishna, Jesus, Buddha, or anything that represents the goal of your inquiry. In practical terms, love and knowledge enhance each other. Love provides sweetness and ease to knowledge. Knowledge accelerates and broadens the focus of love. They meet in reality. Love helps your understanding like this. When you do devotional or bhakti yoga activities, your heart opens and the realizations in your inquiry are smoother and easier. There are fewer sticking points along the way, and it seems like less work. All experience becomes more savory and fragrant. Inquiry opens your heart and broadens your love like this. When you do inquiry, something uncanny happens to the object of your love. It stops seeming like a distant object, whether gross or subtle. It is not experienced as different from you, and it begins to spread out and become everything. You no longer have to look in one particular direction to find your beloved. Your beloved and its sweetness are everywhere you turn. Non-dual inquiry and conventional therapies. The direct path is a route of non-dual inquiry that leads to the recognition of yourself as awareness, beauty, and love. It is not a goal of the direct path to transform you into a person to whom only pleasant things happen. Instead of this phenomenal goal, the direct path has a deeper, more radical goal. The direct path reveals awareness to be the very nature of the person. Awareness is prior to the person, so it can't be possessed by the person. Non-dual inquiry seeks to discover and clarify this nature. In doing so, it subjects the very perspective of the person to deep and radical scrutiny. Sometimes non-dual paths are described as freeing one from suffering. They succeed admirably at this, but not by giving you more favorable experiences. Non-dual inquiry does not work by retaining the person but eradicating the suffering. It is much more thorough than that. What happens through non-dual inquiry is that you come experientially to realize the truth of yourself as awareness, brilliant clarity, and global love, in which there is neither suffering nor personhood. People often wonder whether there is any contradiction between non-dual inquiry and conventional therapies. Because non-dual inquiry does not seek to improve the person, it has no quarrel with conventional therapies. The goals are different. Modalities such as psychiatry and psychotherapy seek to improve the person through techniques that engender a healthy, flourishing person. Psychiatry may even prescribe medicine. Improving the person is a broad goal also shared by medicine, dentistry, physical fitness, exercise, and education. Because a person can participate in more than one activity in life, non-dual inquiry does not see itself as having an either-or relationship with these other activities. One can combine non-dual inquiry with any of these activities. Of course, non-dualism submits the notion of the person to radical scrutiny, but this does not mean that one must stop going to the dentist. One can very well participate in these other activities without taking their goals and models as literal objective truths. In many cases, each activity helps the other. The various therapies have various goals, corresponding with the needs of the person. A person may want to do non-dual inquiry, but may be blocked by severe physical or mental pain. In such a case, the direct path to the relief from that pain is not non-dual inquiry at all, but physical or mental therapy. And just as a person does not expect non-dual inquiry to alleviate a toothache, one would not expect dental therapy to be the key to realizing the truth of the self. It is much more direct to follow the most efficient route to the goal at hand, while allowing the goals to assist each other. The main problem. The main problem that self-inquiry addresses is what Nityatripta's Notes on Spiritual Discourses of Sri Atmananda calls wrong identification. In other words, we take ourselves to be something we're not. We think, feel, and act as though we are a body or a mind or a combination of both, whereas the truth is that we are awareness. It normally seems as though we are some sort of particular object, whereas we are actually the witnessing awareness to which these objects appear. We are not the objects seen, but the seeingness itself. Traditional Advaita Vedanta gives this wrong identification the unwieldy name mutual superimposition of the self and the non-self. In mutual superimposition, we mix up the subject and objects. We take one thing as another. Awareness is the subject, but we treat it as an object, such as when we think that awareness can be seen or localized or personalized. On the other hand, we treat some objects as though they are the subject, such as when we think that a body or mind can see or apprehend. It is inevitable that this mix-up leads to suffering. Even though we are awareness, if we take ourselves as some kind of object like a body or mind, then we feel limited, impermanent, and vulnerable. We feel we can disappear like other objects. Our pleasures, passions, and possessions are temporary and doomed to vanish or fade away. Our lives as humans seem all too short. We seem bound to suffer bad fortune, guilt, shame, cruelty, pain, poverty, disease, and death. These things are naturally expected to happen to objects. So, if we are an object, it is inevitable to think that these things will happen to us. But awareness, our true nature, isn't limited, personal, impermanent, or temporary. It is that to which objects, even universes, appear. It is that in which they arise and fall. The person is an object, so the person comes and goes. Awareness can't come and go since it is that to which coming and going appears. There is no fear or suffering here. Your investigation into your direct experience will reveal that all these objects aren't really objects anyway, but that they have been awareness all along. Thus, all the issues of identification and all the issues of the subject versus objects, all of it, will collapse into sweetness and clarity. The Direct Path's Solution. The solution to wrong identification is right identification. Right identification is basically no identification. As awareness, we don't need to think that we are anything at all. The very need for thinking we are something drops away. The result is just being, as opposed to being something. Of course, when one begins non-dual inquiry, one usually goes through a stage in which one does explicitly identify with awareness. It seems like a new identification in place of the old one. This is quite natural, and it can even seem like putting on a new and strange new suit of clothes. But this sense of strangeness diminishes. Non-dual teachings give us lots of different kinds of pointers that allow us to discover how being awareness is not new or strange at all, but perfectly natural. You get to the point where there is direct, intuitive, non-conceptual experience of being awareness. When this is deeply and directly seen, it cuts through identification with objects. It short-circuits the mutual superimposition and wrong identifications. Once you know yourself as awareness, there is no need to take yourself as anything else. The sense of explicitly identifying with anything, even with awareness, drops away. Standing as awareness, being awareness, will be your reality. Even if it seemed odd when you first encountered non-dual teachings, it's perfectly natural. Standing as awareness isn't even anything you do. It is your natural state, and when this is directly seen, the world of experience will lovingly and smilingly confirm your stand at every moment. How does the direct path work? There are many ways that direct path teachers point to your nature as awareness. The primary tool is direct investigation into your experience. This is a general category which can have many entry points. Besides standing as awareness, they include investigating the world, body, and mind. The result is that they are revealed as awareness and not as objects at all. Investigating deep sleep and sleeping knowingly. Investigating the witness aspect of experience. Cultivating the intense feeling that you are not the doer or enjoyer. Cultivating the conviction that knowledge and happiness are your nature. Western direct path teachers place more emphasis on the body, science, love, and psychological factors than one finds in traditional Advaita Vedanta teachings. This is a natural consequence of the teaching making its way from one culture to another. In Western gatherings and teaching sessions, you will see activities such as yoga, perceptual exercises, body sensing, all of which help one realize that the body is not the container of awareness or the source of sentience, but a set of objects like any other objects appearing in awareness. And in Western gatherings, you'll hear questions on what realization is like, how to gauge one's progress, the place of emotions such as jealousy and anger, free will versus determinism, realization and how to live life, knowing versus feeling, and how realization affects romantic, professional, and family relationships. All of these issues and questions are entryways into knowing your own nature and finding fulfillment. What is direct about the direct path? Direct is usually interpreted to mean not progressive. In other words, you don't have to perfect anything or become anything new. You already are whatever you would seek to become. Of course, this isn't different from many other types of non-dual teaching. Most non-dual teachings agree that the seeker is the sought, and that there's no need and no possibility to become something else. But the direct path means something else by direct as well. Direct means unmediated, and refers to the direct presence and clarity of your experience, which is not interpreted through intellectual or emotional filters. What seems to be a filtering or mediating process isn't that way at all. Instead, what seems to filter or operate on experience is actually already direct experience itself, direct experience masquerading as something else. What is direct experience? Let's start with indirect experience. This is experience in which one thing is experienced by means of another thing. Examples would be experiencing Bali via reading the National Geographic, experiencing Las Vegas via seeing James Bond in Diamonds Are Forever, experiencing fire through smoke, or experiencing an apple via our perceptions of it, such as taste, smell, texture, etc. Direct experience, on the other hand, is the experience of something that is not interpreted or mediated by something else. In experiencing the apple, we directly experience a red color, a crisp texture, a tangy flavor, etc. The experience of Bali is the same. What is given directly to experience is sensations, thoughts, and feelings. We call them Bali. The label is an interpretation, and yet we'll come to find out that direct experience is actually simpler than this. We discover that in direct experience, there are actually no objects at all, and nothing pointing to any objects. This is beautifully simple, and just how we make this discovery is the purpose of this book. All the various experiments, contemplations, and visualizations that you'll encounter here are not ways to become awareness or to gain an intellectual understanding that you are awareness. Rather, they are simply ways to explore the consequences of being awareness. You can think of these activities not so much as goal-oriented, but as exploration, celebration, or beautiful music. The approach taken here. This book involves several different approaches. Standing as awareness, knowingly occupying and inhabiting your true identity and experiencing the resulting confirmation of your stand. Simple remembrance that the body, mind, and world are awareness as well. When we conceptualize them as independent objects, of course, they seem to come and go, and even then, if they come and go, the coming and going is taking place within awareness, which is the common factor. Body, mind, and world are inseparable from awareness, and are never experiences without awareness already being front and center in the picture. This can be experienced at any time if you just stop and try to find an object, any object that is apart from awareness. Abiding in the simple sweetness of being awareness, which is limitless and borderless. This is also something that is available at any time if you stop and notice. The stopping and noticing, of course, won't be there all the time, but the beautiful truth they indicate is always the case. But mostly, this book will proceed at what Advaita Vedanta calls Tattvopadesha. Tattvopadesha is an experiential, logically connected presentation of the teaching from beginning to end. It proceeds from the very concrete to the very subtle. It starts with the simplest and most seemingly obvious experience of separation, for example, the experience of objects in the world that seem to be other than yourself. You will see how these objects are nothing other than awareness. The Tattvopadesha continues with more and more subtle elements of experience until we arrive at pure consciousness. Items we will examine include a vast range of experience, and we will proceed in order from the more concrete to the more abstract. You don't have to memorize this list and may not even need to explore everything on it. But the sorts of experiences we'll look into include the following. Physical objects, which are usually taken to be the textbook definition of reality. the senses, which are thought to be the neutral and transparent gateways to the world of physical reality. The body, including the brain, which is usually thought to be the container of the mind. The mind, which is usually thought to be the container of consciousness. Events, which are sort of like states of affairs but with change and movement. Mental states, including emotional and meditative states, which all too often are experienced as more real than the ground we walk on. Subtle abstract objects, such as cause and effect, identity and difference, time and space, subject and object. These subtle objects are often thought to provide a structure or organization to consciousness. We will see how consciousness cannot possibly be structured or organized by anything. Witnessing awareness, which starts out seeming like a big mind, complete with individuality, memory, and psychological reactivity. But as our investigation continues, witnessing awareness comes to be understood as not possessing any personal, mental, or psychological characteristics at all. Instead, it is realized that witnessing awareness is global clarity and is what all characteristics appear to. Pure consciousness, which is consciousness without the witnessing aspect. At each stage, we will have the chance to try experiments that make clear what we already know. What seems to be something other than awareness is awareness all the way and all the time. This is your happiness. Separation. The false claim of objectivity. Things seem to exist on their own without depending on awareness in any way. Things seem to exist objectively. No matter how concrete or abstract something is, it seems to exist in this way. The Great Wall of China, differential calculus, and moral correctness may not all be physical, but they seem to really exist independently from the mind and independently from awareness. We think of the objective as that which exists on its own and which can be discovered and verified by separate, subjective perceivers. The very notion of objectivity brings in several dualisms at once, such as between subjective and objective, between awareness and object, between separate containers of awareness, between inside and outside the container, and between right and wrong, or accurate and inaccurate. Many other dualisms also depend on the notion of objectivity. Freedom from objectivity and subjectivity. When we investigate objectivity and discover that it is not to be found, we do not fall into its opposite. We do not fall into subjectivity or solipsism. Instead, we become free from this pair of opposites. Non-dual experience is neither objective nor subjective. Rather, what happens is freedom from the very structures that permit this distinction. We become free of its network of limiting assumptions, perceptions, and feelings, along with the images of entrapment, containment, and separation from people and objects. Another dualism is the one between fact and value, or intellect and emotion. The first member of each pair is usually accorded greater status than the second member, so the notion of objectivity often entails the dualism of ranking as well. When we try to be objective about something, we try to describe it as it is, impartially, grasped purely as it is in itself, without being swayed by emotion or evaluation. We feel we should see things from what is sometimes called the view from nowhere, or the God's eye view. Being able to perceive and judge this way is usually valued much more highly than letting any individual, personal, emotional, or evaluative factors operate. The idea is that the object or situation pre-exists, and sentience or awareness is able to transparently and neutrally make contact with the object, thereby conveying true and accurate information about it. Any other way of grasping the object would be subjective, which is usually devalued. When we feel that things
Sample complete. Ready to continue?